Hello and welcome back to Obsessive Prepper AZ. This week on my 10 bucks a week food challenge, I'm going to combine 2 weeks together. So this video is technically week 10 and week 11. And the reason why I did that is I'm going to start going bulk. I'm still going to bring in some smaller items to build our food storage, proteins, meats, and different varieties. But I also want to start amping up on larger volumes of certain items that we can up our preps with. Now my bag of flour and my sugar I purchased at Sam's Club. $6.98 for the flour and $11.88 for the sugar. So I've got 50 pounds of food here, 25 sugar, 25 flour. Now one of the ways that you can store your flour and your sugar is with a FoodSaver. Either you put it in the FoodSaver bags or use your mason jars and these lid attachments. I have the links down below if you're interested in lid attachments and the FoodSaver. And by using these lids, all you have to do is put it over the top of the jar with your hose and it will suck the oxygen out. So we do not need oxygen absorbers. We don't even have to worry about that. But if you don't have the funds right now to purchase a FoodSaver, or let's say you already have the FoodSaver and you don't want to purchase these, you can also dry can in the jars. Now dry canning is putting your flour and your product in your jars, putting it in your oven, bringing the temperature up for an hour, then taking your lids, putting them on your jars, and that vacuum when it cools should seal your jar. Now for me, over the years, I stopped doing dry canning because half of my jars would seal, half of them weren't sealing, and I ended up using my FoodSaver to suck the oxygen out. The only success that I have had with dry canning is I dry can for an hour at 275 degrees, and that's by bringing the heat up. And then putting my warm lids on top, I've been able to create a vacuum. But by having a FoodSaver, I cut that completely out. Now people ask and are questioning larvae, bugs. Do you not need to put it in your oven? Do you not need to put it in your freezer? No, because if you use a FoodSaver, you're removing the oxygen and you're not going to have any environment for those kind of things to hatch, grow, and breed. So no, you don't have to. The dry canning works if you don't have a FoodSaver and you technically want to seal your jars. Dry canning works. Or using a brake bleeder, and we've gone through that in the past. If you want to check that video out, I'll leave some links of people that do use brake bleeders. I don't, because I figure with my FoodSaver, if I don't have electricity, then I'm consuming my product and then I'm eating it at that point. I'm not worried about doing long-term food storage. Now another alternative for you is the LDS cannery has sugar, flour, rice, beans, and other products that you can go to. So if you have an LDS cannery in your area, they do sell to the general public. Check the hours out and you can go purchase sugar. You may have to can it yourself, and then they do have the labels that you can put it in number 10 cans. And this is my number one way of how I store my sugar. I love storing my sugar this way. Now when you store sugar, you do not need to put oxygen absorbers into it. The reason why is if you put an O2 in this can, you're going to have a huge sugar cube. And I've made that mistake one time, like 7 years ago, and the only way I could get my sugar out is when I was ready to use it, I had an ice pick, and I had to just chuck away at it until I broke it down. Also at the LDS cannery, they do sell oxygen absorbers. I also show you at Winco, if you want to check this out. They carry oxygen absorbers and mylar bags. Now I purchased my case of mylar bags from the LDS cannery years ago, and I'm showing you here the 11 by 13, 250 count, Cal Dry 1500. So this is what I have been using for my food preps, long-term food storage. And this is the size of the bag. This works out perfect for me if I'm wanting to put pasta. If you watch previous videos, I show you where I put rice-a-roni, wrap it up in plastic wrap and put it in here. I also put it in FoodSaver bags and put it in my mylar. So this is a neat little size bag, the 11 by 13. These are the 5-gallon mylar bags. So if you wanted to put your flour or your sugar in the mylar bag, the 5-gallon mylar bag, and put it in a 5-gallon bucket, that works great also. You can purchase the 5-gallon bags at Winco if you have a Winco near you, or I also have links down below for all the different mylar bags in the description and in my Amazon store if you want to check that out. What I try to do also is have my rotating stock. And with 5-gallon buckets, unless you have a place to put that bucket, dip out, that's where the bigger quantities where you can start seeing bug problems because of sealing. And where if you have a 5-gallon bucket of flour and you don't turn it, that's where you can see weevils, things like that. You could also use bay leaves to keep those problems at bay. Bay leaf, bay. Anyways, it works. So if you're going to store in 5-gallon buckets, or I've got these little 2-gallon buckets, I picked these up at Winco. Winco sells the Gamma lids also, and they carry them in 2-gallon and 5 gallons. I will leave the links also in my Amazon in the description for Gamma lids if you don't have a Winco near you. What is a Gamma lid? This is neat because if you have food and you're getting in and out of it all the time, Gamma lids snap down on your bucket and they are airtight and they seal, versus just getting, like, let's say a 5-gallon bucket and putting that in, like, call it Home Depot or a Walmart 5-gallon bucket, because those lids are a little flimsy and they are not completely sealable. So having the Gamma lids works great. Let me show you what a Gamma lid is. So this is a 2-gallon bucket. I went ahead and put my first Gamma lid on. And what they do is they screw on and off. And they have a little ring that is right here. And then simply by sealing this and screwing it on, you have an airtight, waterproof container. There's a rubber gasket inside. They work great. So if you're going to use certain items where you're going to get in and out of them quite a bit, I strongly suggest a Gamma lid. So to put a Gamma lid on the bucket, take the center piece off. And you can't, I don't know if anybody can be strong enough to do this. You may have to use, well, yeah, I can get this one on. So I can't get it on anymore. So use a plastic mallet, or I'm being lazy, I'm just using my meat tenderizer mallet. And then I've also put a little pot holder over the top. Okay, so we've got this one sealed. So now it is airtight and watertight. It is locked on here. And then all we've got to do is put our lid on. So now I have my two 2-pound buckets. I can put part of the flour in one and part of the sugar in the other one, and then we can decide what we're going to do with the rest of the product. So by having the 2-gallon bucket, we've got it sealed completely. I like the idea of 2 gallons because it's more manageable. It's, you know, if you ever fill up a 5-gallon bucket of sugar, that thing's heavy. And with this, we can literally move this around to be able to fill up our jars or whatever we need to do. We put our Gamma lid back on and we can put it back into a closet or wherever you're storing your food preps. So I'm going to go ahead and finish filling up my jar. So again, I'm just trying to give you options and different ways to store. I've got my jar here, and by having my FoodSaver, you have this you put over the top of your jar, you use your hose attachment, and you push canister. And I don't let it go all the way on the sugar. All I'm trying to do is just seal my lid. So I don't want to remove completely all the oxygen. Again, by doing that, you're literally going to have a sugar cube. And so this is sealed, and I will put the date on this. This is another option for you. So I've already sealed 2 of my jars, my half-gallon jars back here, and I'm working on a third. And I like storing my sugar in mason jars or in buckets. Again, if you remove all the oxygen, you're going to have a sugar cube. So I think it's better to store it like this or in your 5-gallon buckets or 2-gallon buckets. By putting it in the jar, you're making it rodent-free. A rat cannot gnaw through metal and glass, so you're making it rodent-free. But a rat large enough can gnaw through plastic. So by putting it in your 5-gallon jugs, by putting it in your 5-gallon container, your 2-gallon container, you're running that risk. So our 25-pound bag of sugar filled up our 2-gallon bucket and 3 half-gallon containers. And again, I push using the jars because you can keep your food rodent-free, and you can also turn and rotate your jars. Whereas if you use a FoodSaver mylar bag, it's a one-time deal unless you're breaking it into something smaller. So yes, you have the initial cost of purchasing your jars, your FoodSaver, whatever, but you will get a long return over and over again from them. Now we have our flour. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my 2-gallon bucket, and I'm also going to put it in my mason jar. Now this is stuff that I'm rotating quite a bit, and I've done long-term food storage where I've used the heck out of my FoodSaver bags and my mylar. I just wanted to give these options to you. I'm going to go ahead and put my flour just in my jars in my bucket. Now the only other thing that I'm going to do differently from the sugar with the flour is I will suck the oxygen out of my flour. In the past, I've had comments about when you're doing something like flour and you're using your FoodSaver, they're concerned with the FoodSaver sucking the flour back up into the FoodSaver. Simply by using muffin papers, your little muffins, put them in the jar, and you know what, you could use 1 or 2. They're so cheap to fill that void. So I'll go ahead and do 1 up and then 1 over, a couple of them. We're going to go ahead and put our lid on and suck the air out of this. And by using those muffin papers, they work real well for your regular mouth. The wide mouth, they're not as big, so maybe if you bought some jumbo ones, but I just use a couple of them to fill the space. All right, we're done. And our jar is completely sealed. So 1 down, time to get going on the rest. And of course, why am I using a cup versus pouring? At the very end of the video, you can see why. I did the sugar and I literally dumped it over the container. You know, sometimes stuff happens. A little bit more patience here. I try to make these videos quick because I know your time's valuable. I don't want to waste your time. And I'm not going to fill the flour up too full because I want to be able to at least be able to put a cup in when it's time to measure and not have it fall out over the sides. And all you've got to do is tamp it down a little bit. Remove some of the oxygen. But when you do this, you want to run it through a sieve, a sifter, something to get some more air back into your flour when you're ready to use it. So we have 2 gallons of flour, sealed tight and ready to go when you're ready to use it. Now, if you don't want all-purpose flour, you want to use whole wheat. I show in my videos Winco, getting a different variety, different selections, adding some grains. If you're going to store whole red wheat or whole white wheat, you definitely want to remember to have a grinder, some way to be able to grind down your flour, your grains. A simple mortar and pestle. One of my subscribers had mentioned this, but it would be a lot of work, but it would work in a pinch. I literally use my mason jars for so many things. I put my muffin liners in, that way I can see them and it stores them. Just a neat idea for your shelf. Get the next one sealed. So easy to do it this way. Like I said, the initial cost, but over the long run and your time, it's so much easier. And then if you have to open it up, use your FoodSaver, suck the oxygen back out of it. Now we have 2-gallon container of flour, 3 half-gallon jars of flour, and because our flour doesn't pack like our sugar does, I'm going to have to do something with the rest of the flour. So I'm going to go ahead and give you an idea of the FoodSaver bag if you've never used a FoodSaver bag. So I've got a bag here, I've got it sealed down at the bottom. And then we'll just have to pack it down before we try to lay it over to put in our FoodSaver. Okay, go ahead and open it up. I'm going to lay it down and line it up. Close her down and vacuum. FoodSaver bags are awesome. I use my FoodSaver bags a lot for frozen foods. Put your steaks in, it seals them, you don't get freezer burn, you can be in your freezer a good 2-3 years for frozen food. You can see here that I've got some of my flour here. I'm going to go ahead and stick this back in my FoodSaver and seal it one more time up at the top here. Not sucking the oxygen out, I'm just going to seal it one more time. That way we know we have a good seal, especially with powdered products. So I went ahead and put an extra bead of seal. Now the only other thing that you could do is, if you wanted to, you could put an O2 in this before you seal it, and also you could put it in your mylar bags, put an O2 so you could set it in here, put an O2 and then seal it. And by doing that, put it in the mylar bag, light is not affecting it anymore. Store it in a dark, cool place. Now I don't have to use my mylar because I put it in my closet. It's a cool temperature, it's dark, so I don't have to do that. But if you're going to store long term, make sure that it's in a cool area. You don't want hot because the heat is what breaks down your food. We have our sugar and our flour completely stored now. I've given you options on different things that you can do for long-term food storage, or let's just say you want it on the shelf for a couple years. If you want to dry can, my only success with dry canning is by getting the oven to 275 and cooking for an hour. Get your mason jar lids, put them in hot water like if you were canning, get those lids warm, and before you put them on your jars, after they come out of the oven for an hour, make sure the lids are completely dried off, put your lid on and your band, and you should get a vacuum from it. So I've had half success with dry canning, and I prefer using my FoodSaver and my lid attachments and sucking the oxygen out that way. One quick side note, what I do on all my food preps, I'll write down what I have here. So sugar and 619. And on my buckets, I will use a sticker and write on that. So make sure that you date your food products. Here, we're gonna go AP flour, 619. And I'm going to use this and rotate. Like I said, this is not long-term food storage. This is something that you're going to be able to use in, let's call it 6 months, 9 months. So we're building up our food storage. We're going to get a nice food storage. And then once we have a shelf-stable pantry with food storage, then we can think about long-term food storage. I hope you consider watching our 10 bucks a week challenge, week 1 through week 9, and you will see all the different things that I show you for food preps and give you a general idea about food preps. Shelf-stable pantry is a bonus for us all and for our family. So this is our week 10, week 11, 10 bucks a week food prep challenge. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please subscribe. If you want to be notified for future videos, ring the bell. Have a blessed day. Whoa. 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 This is going to cause a problem.